what time is it right now? And is it even true? Okay, so people have claimed to know what time it is and that time exists for thousands of years now, but now people are asking the question of how do we even know that those people back in the day thousands of years ago were reliable? How do they know that time was actually correct and accurate when they came up with their figures of what time was? Well, in today's video, I'm going to try to answer that question and a couple more. Firstly, we're going to start with the question that has been asked for hundreds and hundreds of years. If you take a boat like this and you slowly replaced each one of these planks, and eventually you replaced every single plank on this boat, but you saved all of the old ones, you reassemble the old planks into a boat again, which one is now the original boat? So, there's two arguments to this question, and that's why it's sort of a paradox, because you can't really have one definitive answer, but that's what I'm going to try to do. The first argument is that this boat, the boat that has slowly been replaced, is the original boat. And they're saying that if you replaced one plank on the boat, is it a new boat? Well, no, it's not. So, why would you say if you replaced all of the planks on the boat that it's a new boat? Well, that's kind of the question. Now, the other people say that, well, this boat is made out of all new pieces, therefore it's a new boat, and all the old pieces, and you reassemble those, that's actually the original boat. I can absolutely see the thought process behind both of these answers to this question, but what is my answer? Well, I think that the reason why this is seen as paradoxical is because it's confusing to people because it's a boat, and boats can move, but this question becomes a lot easier if you think about it as if it's a house. If you have a house and you slowly replace all the bricks on a house, and you take all the old bricks and you reassemble them into a new house, which one is the original house? Well, you can see how this becomes a little bit easier because the house never moved. Even though you're slowly replacing all of the bricks on this house, the house is still standing in the same spot. It's still the same original house. You're still living in the same spot. You're still living in the same house. If you take all those old bricks and reassemble them, that's now a new house. So at least to me, when I think about it like a house, the question becomes a lot easier and the answer becomes a lot easier as well. I believe that the original boat is the one that got slowly replaced with all the planks because, I mean, you can't really factor in when it became a new boat. It never became a new boat. It's still the same boat. The boat is still in the same place. Just because you slowly replaced all the planks with new planks doesn't mean that it's now a new boat. It just means it's the original boat with new planks. Just because you're replacing the old planks with new planks doesn't mean this is slowly becoming a new boat. It's still the same boat. My answer is the boat that is slowly getting replaced with planks is the original boat. Okay, so that one took a little bit of thinking, but this one takes a little bit less thinking, but it's still a very commonly asked question today. Did cavemen actually exist? So the thing is this question is asked usually by Christians, and they're usually saying that cavemen can't exist because Adam and Eve were created first as the first humans, and they weren't cavemen, so cavemen never existed. But me being a Christian, I believe that Adam and Eve were the first humans, but who's to say that cavemen didn't come from Adam and Eve? Everyone came from Adam and Eve. Why not cavemen? We do have actual evidence of caveman's existence. We have skeletons and bones and even skulls that are different shapes than normal human skulls today. We also have evidence of very primitive tools and weapons and instruments, figurines and paintings inside of cave walls. These are all just proving that there was some sort of ancient human that lived in just kind of the wild and used these wild tools and these wild instruments and weapons and stuff that they just made from the sticks and the stones in the ground and turned those into things that they could use for their very simple-minded human brain. I don't believe we evolved from monkeys into cavemen. I just believe that cavemen were just a different form of man compared to Adam and Eve. In the same way that me being white, my facial structure is not going to be the same as an Asian guy. That doesn't mean that the Asian guy is not a human, or me being a white guy, I'm not a human. We're both humans, we just come from different parts of the world, and we have different facial structures and different facial features. So with all the evidence that we have to support that cavemen did exist, I can say yes. And if you're a Christian, I don't believe that there's any problem with believing that cavemen existed. The problem that a lot of these scientists make is they say that cavemen came from and evolved from apes and early monkeys and stuff like that. That's where I think the problem is. There's no proof that cavemen evolved from monkeys at all. But there is proof and there is evidence that they existed at some point. And I think as a Christian, there's no problem with believing that Adam and Eve, and this is not me saying this as fact, this is just me saying this for example, were Asians, and these ancient cavemen and stuff were just white people. Now again, I'm not saying this because of their skin color or where they were actually from, I'm just using this as an example. I don't think there's anything wrong with believing that cavemen descended from Adam and Eve. They were just kind of in different parts of the world and developed different facial structures and different bone structures to try to be adapted to the scenario that they're living in. So maybe Adam and Eve were cavemen, but that's kind of getting away from the point. The point is, did cavemen exist? And I think we could say pretty definitively, yes. Yes, they did. Okay, now we're getting into the final question, the main question of the video. Is time actually true? And more importantly, does time actually exist? I'm going to answer this in two different ways. Number one, how do we know what time is actually the true time? My watch right now says it's 4:36 p.m., but how do I know that that is actually accurate? Where do we get this number from? And number two, does time even exist? We have this watch on our wrist that says that it's this time and it's going to be this time in an hour, but do we really know that time itself actually exists? I'm going to answer the first question. I mean, every iPhone, which is what I'm recording on right now, every iPhone has the same exact time, the same exact clock, and it's all run by the world clock, and that is the time that is generally accepted to be the time, the real time. But thousands of years ago, the way that people figured out what time was is by sundials. And I think a lot of people forget about sundials. The sun always moves in the exact same pattern as well as the earth and the moon. They always move the exact same way. So that's the answer to the first part of the question, but the second part of the question, does time itself actually exist? Not the sun and not the shadows and not whatever time it is on my watch. Time itself. Does it actually exist? Time itself is not actually really provable. And in a previous episode, I kind of explained how time isn't provable by answering the question of, does the future really exist? And my conclusion to that question was, no, the future doesn't exist because, by definition, the future hasn't happened yet. And if something hasn't happened yet, then can you really say that it exists? No. What I did say is that the only thing that we can actually be sure of that is actually existing is right now. What has existed in the past doesn't exist anymore. It's not currently happening, therefore, it doesn't really exist anymore. And same thing for the future and time. It hasn't really happened yet. We don't know that time is actually going to exist anytime in the future. And if time in the future has not happened yet, then can we really say that time exists? No, I don't think we can. Time itself is not really provable. The only thing that we can prove is right now. When I'm recording this video right now, I know that I'm saying the things that I'm saying, and my camera is recording, and my microphone is working, and I'm holding it in my hand, and I have gloves on. I know all of these things because they're happening right now. But do I know that time is going to exist? Do I know that the future is going to exist in the next 10 minutes? No, I don't. I can say pretty certainly that 10 minutes from now is going to exist. I'm not gonna die in the next 10 minutes. Hopefully, and I don't think that the universe is just gonna collapse in the next 10 minutes, hopefully, but I can say that I think it's going to happen, but is it really going to happen? And more importantly, does it actually exist if it hasn't happened yet? And I think the answer to that is no. Oh man, I had to think a little bit on that one, and that's what I'm aiming to do. I'm trying to think, I'm trying to answer these questions as honestly as I possibly can. Like I said, if you guys have questions for me, put them in the comments down below, and I will try to answer them as honestly as I possibly can in a future video. I hope that my answers were good enough for all of these questions. I hope that you guys learned something, and I hope that you enjoyed, but with that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.